You ever been a part of a team where it seemed like everything it did, everything everyone on the team tried to accomplish just didn't work? Like it seemed like there was constant struggle, no matter what the leader tried to do or how the leader tried to motivate everybody. And ultimately it led to like the team falling apart, results going down, stress going up, and culture just in the toilet. In this video, we're going to talk about how to go from tolerable as a team leader, take that team from tolerable to the top. And we're going to do it with me recounting some of the most painful, but some of the most profitable lessons I learned in my leadership journey. And hopefully you can profit from them the easy way before you have to learn from them the hard way, like I had to. So let's dive in. So, hey, we're going to start right off the bat with my first leadership job ever. And I was right out of having a successful sales career, and at 27 years young, my organization, like a lot of organizations will do, promoted me into leadership. Now there was a problem. I was good at sales. I had never led a soul, and full transparency, could barely lead myself. Most days I couldn't at all. So how in the world was I supposed to lead six new people, let alone six new people in a new market? So I was 27 years old and they said, "You are good at your job, so we need you to lead these people now." And I said, "Great." Like a lot of people will, right? Like you did. Like you did on the other side of this camera. And I don't know about you, but when you first get your first leadership job, you're really excited because there's more money, there's more responsibility, and you feel like you're going up the ladder, which seems like the right direction at the time. And what you find out is if you jump into it before you are prepared, like I did, you figure out that leadership is far from just telling people what to do well, what you used to do well, and then they do it. That's just not how that works because we lead people. And so 2.5 years into my sales journey, I hit a couple of president's clubs and was able to get this offer. And we were so excited. And myself and my fiance decide we're going to move from Orlando, Florida to Miami, Florida. Now, let me tell you something. If you don't know anything about Miami, I was told this when we were considering the transition. Miami's a different country, John. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. And I was like, listen, I've grown up in Florida. I was born in Sarasota. I lived in Orlando for the last 9. Like I know Florida. Florida's Florida, right? We get to Miami, and let me tell you, Miami is a different country. It is a different country altogether. The people have a different culture. The main language isn't even English, right? The majority of the people in Miami, the native Miamians, speak Spanish and different dialects of Spanish. And all of these things I was not ready for, but we dove into the deep end anyway. And so we get to Miami and figure out that it is an amazing city with culture and history and legacy and pride, and the food is to die for. And so we get to Miami and I got to figure out this leadership thing. And the first lesson that Miami taught me was, and I learned this one the easiest of the 5 or 6 we're going to jump into in the Miami journey, but the first one was you need to acknowledge the gaps you have right out of the gate. So the gaps I had were easy. I was young, 27, didn't speak Spanish, main language of the county I was leading in. Didn't know anything about the Miami city business landscape, the people, the culture, knew nothing about it, and I had never led before. So all these things, I'm coming in the door, and the first thing that I had to do was acknowledge that I had those shortcomings. The first thing you're going to need to do every single time you take over a new team, whether it's the first time you're a leader or the first time you're a leader of those people, you need to acknowledge that you don't have it all together. This is not your show. This is not you telling them what to do. This is you learning about some of the things that is going on in this team dynamic right now and figuring out how you can serve your people after you learn about the people, the market, the situation, the dynamics, the struggles. And you got to make sure you're admitting to them that, hey, I'm coming in imperfect too. And we're going to do this together. And I got to tell you, at 27 years old, coming into that first leadership journey, if I didn't fall on that sword and self-deprecate, we would have been in trouble. So the first thing you got to do as a new leader on a team, whether it's your first time leading ever, the first time leading this team, is you got to come in and acknowledge openly and honestly the shortcomings that you have. The second thing was you got to know your people. Now, this was a tough one for me because I tried to get to know them individually by doing happy hour once or twice when I got there. And I was like, I know my people, done. And what I figured out was I had to get to know them individually, personally, and professionally. And then I had to get to know them collectively, personally and professionally. One of the things I figured out in Miami was it was different culturally. And I didn't know collectively that when they hung out with their families. And so our first team event together, I just assumed, hey, listen, it's associates of the company of the team only. And when I tell you this ticks some people off, it almost offended them. And because I didn't get to know them collectively, that their culture was that they wanted their family to be part of this environment, because I didn't do that work, it kind of strained the relationship a little bit. So the first thing you got to do is get to know your people individually and collectively. This will do two things. It'll begin to build a relationship, right? That's pretty obvious. But the second thing it'll do, which is pretty shocking, is it'll show you whether they are part of the problem or whether they potentially can be part of the turnaround. Sometimes when we as leaders take over teams, we quickly look at data and metrics. We ask other people what they think of the situation, whether it's our leader or somebody else that knows the market. And we don't take time to get to know the people. And I have been shocked in my years of leadership that once I got to know people, sometimes the people that looked like on paper they were going to be part of the turnaround, sometimes those people were not culturally good, and I had to get them out. And sometimes when I looked at on paper, the data showed me that this person was not going to be part of the turnaround, that they needed to be out. They were part of the problem. But I got to know them. They were going to be more important to this turnaround than they initially realized and that I initially realized. So getting to know people individually and collectively, really, really important. The third thing I learned is turnarounds do not happen until you get buy-in at some point. And the most important part of buy-in is an advocate. You need an advocate. What is an advocate? An advocate is somebody on your team. It's a player on your team that can have your back when you're not there. The advocate that you develop has to be someone that has trust, has to be someone that has success, has to be someone that has influence. And here's a little tip. The advocate you usually want is the advocate that is the most hard to get trust from, to gain trust with, and to get buy-in from. So I'm going to say it again. The advocate that you usually want that will have the most influence on your people when you're not there is the person that it's going to be, they're going to be the hardest for them to trust you. And they're going to be the hardest person to be convinced to become your advocate because they've seen the struggles of the team. Remember, you're taking over a team, you're trying to turn it around. They've seen the struggles, they've seen the inconsistencies, and candidly, for a lot of people that are top performers, they just, gosh, they don't want anything to do with it. So this advocate has to be someone of influence, and you got to do the work to get that person to be on your side. Mine in Miami was a 40-year-old woman that was unbelievably successful before I got there. So she's 13 years my senior, and she knew them. She was born and raised in Miami. She sold the product longer than I had been in corporate America. She had more President's Clubs, more Pinnacle Awards, Falcon Awards, Board of Directors Awards. I mean, she had more awards than I had months in the company that I was working in, right? And I come in and I'm her new leader. But when I got her on my side, what I knew was I had someone in my corner to support the turnaround from the locker room when I wasn't there. It took longer than I thought. It took more sacrifice than I thought. It took me serving her more than I thought. But when she realized that I was in her corner to make her job better, to make her better as a professional, and to make her work life more tolerable by taking this team to the top so she could be around winners instead of C players, she was in. And her name is Sherelle. Her and I are great friends to this day. Her family and my family still stay in contact. And I got to tell you, that relationship has just thrived over the years. And thank God she was my advocate, because without her, I don't know that I could have done what we did in Miami in those 4 years. So you got to find an advocate. You got to get buy-in, and that advocate's a key part. The fourth thing that I'll tell you is telling your people the truth early and often in love is crucial. Here's the deal, y'all. Everyone on your team knows that your team needs to be turned around. That's why you're there. If you weren't there, the previous leader could have done what the company brought you in to do, but they didn't. So you're there. So to try to sugarcoat to the team that you're just there to, hey, we're just going to have fun. We're going to build culture. We're going to start winning. To start to sugarcoat it is not going to do you any favors. You got to tell the people the truth. You got to tell the people what they know already. If you are the leader that comes in and tries to make everyone feel good instead of telling everyone the truth, you will quickly be weeded out and the trust goes away. You got to tell them the truth early and often. People want to know where they stand. People want to know where they stand. They want to know where the team stands. They want to know where the turnaround stands. Where are we in this journey? Trust me, clarity is kindness. And the fifth thing that I learned in Miami is to sustain success, you got to keep track of what works and what doesn't. The first year we were in Miami, I didn't know this, but I was the fourth leader in 4 years in that market. And I remember finding it out and thinking to myself, what is that? What is that? And what does that build? And what I figured out really quickly was there was no consistency, no performance, no trust, no accountability, no reliability, no anything positive. And so what I quickly realized was I had to figure out what was going to work. And that year, it was like drinking from a fire hose, as a lot of you in the leadership realm know. Taking over a team that first 6 months to a year, whether you've done it 100 times or whether this is your first time doing it, it can be a lot. But that first year, we got very lucky. We had some good breaks go our way, and we had our team working their butt off. And we were the number one team in the country that year. And I remember finding out we were the number one team in the country, and I looked at my wife and I said, how? And 2 days later, my boss's boss came into my office to congratulate me. And he was like, hey, John, congratulations. The team did awesome. Super proud of what you've done. Excited about the direction of the growth. How'd you do it? And I sat there and it felt like 15 minutes. It was probably 10 seconds. And I said, I don't know. We just, we worked hard and, gave it everything we got. And it worked. And he sat back in his chair. He said, well, how are you going to do it again? And I didn't have an answer. And he paused and kind of grinned. And he said, John, let me tell you something. The worst thing in the world for a leader to do is to fail and not know why. The second worst thing in the world for a leader to do is to succeed and not know why. You have to know why. You have to know what worked and what didn't so that you can duplicate what worked and destroy what didn't, right? You have to know what lessons you learned so that you don't have to learn the lessons over again. You have to know the mistakes you made so that you don't make them again. And you have to know the successes you had and why you had them so you can duplicate the habits to grow on the success. If you don't know why you are winning or losing, you are bound to a result of chance as you try to grow something with sustainability. Figure out why you are winning or losing and then act accordingly. So Miami taught me a lot. Those are the top 5 things that first leadership journey taught me. And man, was it a journey. And I got a chance to take over a new team in a new division after 4 years and move from Miami, Florida to Jacksonville, Florida with my then wife and daughter. I think my daughter was 2 or 3 at the time. And we moved to Jacksonville. And man, what a cool place that was. We had so much fun living in St. Augustine, just south of Jacksonville. And when we got to Jacksonville, that taught me a ton of stuff too. And the first thing it taught me was you better figure out your situation real quick. Because when I got to Jacksonville, we had a staffing plan of 6 people. I had 2 in seat and I had 1 trainee. And my boss said, go fix it. And when I sat back and said, okay, let's figure out what we got here. We built something in Miami that we turned around. Can we do the same thing in Jacksonville? A little bit different situation, a little bit different circumstances. Let's dig in. And the first lesson I learned in Jacksonville was having the right people in your foundation as a core is going to speed up your turnaround immensely. We might have had 2 people, but we had the right 2 people to start this turnaround. It actually probably sped up our turnaround, if I'm honest, because I didn't have to fire 4 people and then rehire them again. I already had open seats. So I was good. But the 2 people we had to start our turnaround were the right 2 people. They knew the market, they had lived there for a while, they knew the business, they worked their tails off. They didn't make excuses, they didn't gossip, they didn't do anything that you wouldn't want a good teammate to do. They were here for the turnaround. Find the top people, the best people you can to be your foundation. I got to tell you, having the right people as a foundation for your turnaround is going to make a world of difference. Okay, the second thing Jacksonville taught me is while these were top performers, they were also top performers that had a lot of attention for a while. So the next thing I had to do was I had to tell them what the advantage of turning the team around would be to them. This seems weird, but it is so missed because you have to understand the superstars that are still around, they got egos, they got pride. So a lot of the stuff that you're trying to fix means you're going to have some people that are competing for that top spot with them, which they might not love. So you need to state to them why the turnaround is advantageous. Sometimes we just think, well, of course everyone's going to want the team to be better. But the reality is most people, especially individual contributors, are going to look out for themselves more than they are the team just because people are naturally selfish. It doesn't mean they're bad. It just means we have to understand that we're talking to the individual and they care more about their individual situation than the team situation. So you got to state the advantages to the people that are going to stay on the team, state the advantages of what this turnaround is going to look like. Okay. The third thing is you got to know the strengths of your people. Please don't make the mistake that I made. What I made was the classic error in leadership. I thought if somebody was good at something, that they would want to teach other people how to do it. I'm a sales leader. Most salespeople that are good at something don't want to teach nobody. They just want to go do it more to make more money. But my dumb self decided to take the 2 people that were part of the foundation that were successful and tell them, hey, listen, your strength is sales. So I want to go. I want you to duplicate it with the new hires, and it drained them. Get to know the strengths of your people. Let's define strengths. Strengths are what people are good at and what gives them energy when they do it. So I may be good at playing basketball, but just because I'm good at playing basketball doesn't mean I want to teach people how to be good at playing basketball. If I'm good at playing basketball and I enjoy playing basketball, it doesn't mean I like to teach that thing. It's the reason why a lot of star athletes are not great coaches. A lot of star athletes are not great coaches because they do the skill well and enjoy the skill. They do not enjoy teaching the skill, and they don't have the skill to teach the skill because teaching is different than doing. So you have to know the strengths of your people. Sometimes the people that are really good at individual tasks can be more of an asset in that part of the business than the superstar salesperson or the superstar IT person or the superstar HVAC tech or whatever the case may be. Know the strengths of your people so you can maximize it. Because when you know the strengths of your people and you have them do that a lot, not only will they enjoy their work more and be more productive, but you will have a happier team because everyone's going to be able to contribute in their own unique way. It's not just going to be one person on the pedestal all the time. So the fourth thing that I learned is huge for today's market because remote work's here to stay. Hybrid work is here to stay. And what I learned before I needed to was remote teams and remote team members can be equally valuable, if not more, to the culture, but only if it's intentional. So I had an associate that came back to the company. It was a previous employee, came back, and he worked in the panhandle of Florida. Now, the panhandle of Florida, he worked in Pensacola, and Pensacola was about an 8-hour drive from Jacksonville. Now, that's not close, right? And he was on an island out there in a remote market, and I had to figure out how to make him productive because he was traditionally he was an average performer. You know, he would sell $250,000, $300,000 a year, which is about average in the sale we were in. And I had to figure out how to make him a superstar because the market could support it and his skills could support it. So why wasn't he doing it? So I had to communicate with him a little bit differently. Couple things when you're dealing with remote people. Number one, undivided attention could be your most valuable tool in getting them ramped and consistently performing more than anything else. What do I mean by undivided attention? The people in my office saw me every day. They saw me multiple times a day, multiple hours a day. So the communication that was, hey, it was very piecemeal. It was very in a pocket. It was very 2 minutes here while I'm on my way to another meeting. But it was a lot. So I didn't have to worry about them feeling cared for because I was around them and communicated with them, even if it was in little snippets all the time. The remote employees are not that way. The remote employees, when you talk to them, they need your undivided attention in order for them to feel valued. And so what I did was every single week, Friday afternoon, I was on my drive home. Pensacola is an hour behind where the East Coast time was. And I would drive home and I would talk to this man for about an hour and a half, 2 hours every single day. And I would figure out, I wanted to learn about his daughters. I wanted to learn about his hobbies. I wanted to learn about his struggles. I wanted to learn about why he came back to the company. I wanted to learn about what this job was going to do in the microcosm of his life. And what I found out over time was he cared about two things deeply. He cared about his daughters. He cared about his motorcycle. And so when we started to make a game plan after about 6 months of him being here, going into his first full fiscal back, I said, Rue, what do you want to do with this? And he said, dude, I want to have time to visit my daughters. His daughters were in college at the time. I want to have time to visit my daughters. And I want to have time and money to like ride my motorcycle to Vegas and back. That'd be kind of cool. I was like, why don't you do it, man? Like, that sounds unbelievable. Not for me. I'm not a motorcycle guy, but it sounds unbelievable, right? And he said, I don't have the time or the money. And I said, you're in sales, dude. Why can't we just fix both of those things? And we started to craft a plan that because he told me what he really wanted out of this job, the plan we crafted, he really cared for. And because he cared for the plan and wasn't just shooting for some arbitrary corporate made up goal, every time we talked through the lens of that plan. Fast forward, first 6 months of the year, he made triple the money he made ever before in any other organization, which allowed him, he more than tripled his quota for the year. He blew it out of the water, right? And because of that, I literally told him, Rue, I'm going to let you take February off. You're more than triple expectation. I want you to take February. So what he did was he had made enough money because of his commissions for the first 6 months. He drove to Vegas, had a week and a half to Vegas, drove back to Pensacola, flew up to the Northeast to visit his daughters for 10 days, flew back, and he came back so refreshed. He started an additional $400,000 on the backside of that year, all because as a remote employee, I took the time, uninterrupted, intentionally, to know what he wanted out of this job and what part this job played and what he was trying to accomplish within his life at that point. Remote workers can be crazy productive, but you can't piecemeal the time you spend with them. All right, number 5, and this is the last one from Jacksonville before I wrap it up with my first role as a VP. But the last one from Jacksonville is key. Losing your top performer can be an opportunity. It doesn't always have to be a weakness. And sometimes you need to let go of your top performer if it means increasing your culture. So here's the story behind this one. My 3rd year in seat, we had just come off of a tough year and I was determined to rebuild and all the stars were about to align. And 2 months into the role, a salesperson who carried 54% of my quota that year left the organization completely, just gone, just vanished. My quota that year was 2.5 million. He carried 1.3 of it. And I remember calling my boss's boss at the time and saying, I need quota relief. I need this. I need that. The team's over. The year's over. And he calmly just told me, do what you can do. How you relay to this team what just happened is going to be really important. So I took the rest of the day, took the next day, I addressed my team and I said, all right, guys, call him Bill for this example. I said, Bill left. Obviously, it's a shock to everybody, me as much as all of you. But here's what this does. Look at all the opportunity Bill needed for him to write $1.3 million. All of that opportunity now is going to be spread around to you. Imagine the money you can make. Imagine the success you can have. Imagine the trips you'll qualify for, all because Bill left. Let's make sure that we maximize this event more than ever. And when I tell you the lens that I looked through after losing our top performer and the lens that I communicated through, he was our only $1 million producer the 2 years before. He leaves, two people stepped up to become $1 million producer. We had higher annual sales projections per salesperson in that year than ever. We broke records for the Jacksonville market that year, all because of how we looked at an event that could have wrecked us. So sometimes losing your top person can be a blessing if you look at it the right way. All right. So all that success in Jacksonville after all that happened allowed me to get to a Houston VP spot. And I was so excited because this is the first time I'm leading leaders. But just like every other leadership transition, I have to figure this out. And so I was able to apply all those 10 lessons that we just went through in the first two leadership stints. And leadership is a little bit different when you're leading leaders because it's really more strategic than tactical all of a sudden. And I'm only going to share one lesson I learned from the VP job because I think it's that valuable. And if you take away nothing else from this video, please take this away as a leader, whether you're a first-time leader or you're leading this team for the first time. It's about culture. You can either have a culture suited for A players to thrive or C players to survive, but you can't have both. You have to pick as the leader, and you can't pick and just talk about it. You got to be about it. You have to make decisions through the lens of ensuring your A players have an environment to thrive. You have to make staffing decisions. You have to make budget decisions. You have to make time management decisions. You have to make conflict resolution decisions. You have to communicate this way. You have to hire this way. You have to fire this way. You have to set standards this way. You have to hold accountable this way. All of these things that we do as leaders every single day have to be filtered through the lens of, am I making my C players comfortable or am I making the environment to which my A players can thrive? If you're apathetic towards average, your A players will leave. If your standards are of excellence, your C players will be very uncomfortable and will also leave. So you have to choose who you are okay with leaving. This is easier said than done, gang. But I got to tell you, this lesson in Houston has created this culture where only A players want to work here because C players are intimidated. They feel a little inferior, and that's okay. Doesn't mean they're bad people, but you got to decide what culture you're going to build. And that is the main lesson that I learned from this most recent leadership job. And I hope that it blesses you. I hope this teaching blessed you in your leadership journey. And until next time, keep leading from the front so you don't get left behind.